Hello. Uh, in fact, I know that we have started our discussion on the fully immiscible liquids, but there was a piece of information which was pending from our discussions on partially miscible liquids. And whenever we talk about partially miscible liquids, the example we take is phenol water system, and the property we study, at least we have been studying uh, in our current syllabus, is the critical solution temperature or even the miscibility temperature, because the temperature affects the miscibility of partially miscible liquids, in the sense that uh, maybe if I have to revise this once, that you prepare different compositions of phenol and waters, varying the percentage of phenol in water, they become miscible at different temperatures. And if you go on doing like this for increasing concentration of phenol in water gradually, tube by tube, you end up with a graph in which, if you plot the miscibility temperature against the composition of phenol water or the percentage of phenol in water, you get a inverted parabola. That's a bell-shaped curve, and the peak of that curve will be referred to as critical solution temperature. Okay, now we are actually looking at, while we were discussing, we were looking at a case in which it was pure phenol and pure water, only phenol water. There was nothing else in it. It's a strictly binary mixture. Now, if at all there is an impurity present in this binary system, example, a solute, what happens to the miscibility temperature? Will it remain same? For the given composition of phenol water system, will it remain same? That's the question. In fact, the observation is it doesn't. It doesn't remain same. The presence of an impurity affects the miscibility temperature of partially miscible liquids. So the case or case study we are considering here will be phenol water system, record its miscibility temperature in presence of an impurity and see the effect of the impurity. In fact, this is an experiment which you have in your laboratory, but I keep repeating this. We don't know when your labs are going to open. So it's better that you understand the theory here, principles, everything here, and you can apply whenever your laboratory starts. So what is the theory behind this? It is simple. A binary liquid mixture, partially miscible liquid mixture, has a miscibility temperature for the given composition of the mixture. In presence of impurity, this miscibility temperature increases. I can repeat this. In presence of an impurity, the miscibility temperature of a partially miscible liquid system increases. If the miscibility temperature increases, it automatically means even the critical solution temperature increases. Therefore, we can construct an experiment to understand this or to measure this. And the experiment we do here is, again, take phenol water system and then take sodium chloride as an impurity. So if you do the experiment, what is that you see? Look at this table. We have prepared phenol water mixture and recorded its miscibility temperature without NaCl. If you can see the table, the concentration of NaCl, percentage weight by volume, is 0. And what is the CST for this system? 67.5 degrees Celsius. So this is around 67 degrees Celsius is the CST, is it not? See that 0.5, 0.4 degree variation will always be there depending on the experimental conditions. And there is a margin of error in every experiment. Maybe the margin of error here is 0.5 to 1 degree Celsius. Now, if to the same system I add NaCl, 0.2% weight by volume, you look at the CST now, 69 degrees Celsius. And as you increase the concentration of NaCl from 0.2 to 0.8, the CST keeps on increasing. So looking at this table, what is the obvious conclusion? Of course, A table can be better represented in the form of graph also, is it not? Table is not visually attractive. It is more like an account. But graphs are visually attractive. You can easily follow the trend if you have a graph in front of you, is it not? Look at this graph. The x-axis here is concentration of NaCl, and the y-axis is the CST of phenol water system. As the concentration of NaCl increases, the CST is also increasing. So the relationship is like this. In presence of an impurity, the critical solution of phenol water system increases in direct proportion. What do you mean by that? As you increase the percentage of NaCl, the CST increases. So at high concentrations of NaCl, naturally the CST would be very high. But there is a range. You can't increase the concentration of NaCl too much. That range is for the best working condition. Usually that range is. Anyways, so we work between 0.1 to 1% NaCl in our laboratories. Even in your experiment, you do. The solution of NaCl you make will be ranging between 0.1 to 1%. So that is what comes out. NaCl increases the CST of phenol water system in direct proportion. Okay, fine. This is an observation. Good. We understood this. But is there any application of this principle? Of course, yes. What is the application? What would be the application of this principle? You guess. In chemistry, particularly in lab experimental chemistry, we are always interested in one factor, that is amounts, quantitative estimations. How to calculate amount of the given substance in the unknown samples. Is it not? The concentrations of the substances. Most of the times in your laboratory, you will be doing either quantitative analysis or qualitative analysis. Qualitative, you're just going to detect the presence of a compound. But quantitative, you are going to detect the amount of the compound or the concentration of the compound. In such a case, can this observation or can this principle be explored to calculate the percentage of NaCl in an unknown solution? Yes, of course you can do. How to do the experiment? For that, you have to calculate, you have to construct a calibration curve. What is calibration curve? Calibration curve is the recording of a property with known concentrations of the analyte. That's the calibration curve. You can construct calibration curve for any analyte. In this case, our analyte is sodium chloride. So first you have to make known concentrations of sodium chloride and then add it to phenol water, record the CST. And now draw a graph with concentration of NaCl and CST. Naturally, the graph will be a straight line, which will be increasing linearly. And please note, the origin of this graph will not be zero. That means at zero concentration of NaCl, the CST will not be zero. Even at zero concentration of NaCl, pure phenol water system has a CST value, and that is usually 67 degrees Celsius. Is it not? So you can construct this calibration curve. Now I will give you an unknown sample of NaCl and ask you to find out the concentration. Can you do this? Of course you can do. How? Take that unknown NaCl, add it to your phenol water system, and then record the CST again. Get that CST value. Already you have a calibration curve. So what is the CST of that? Go on y-axis, draw an horizontal, meet this line, and then extend it to y-axis. So that will be the concentration of your unknown NaCl. In this way, you can estimate the amount of NaCl present in an unknown sample. So don't you think it's a very useful method now? So you have one more method. Usually, what are the methods available for quantitative estimations? Basically, titrations, gravimetric estimations. This is also a method now to find out the concentration of NaCl. NaCl is one example of an impurity. You can take any impurity. But in our experiment, in our laboratory work, NaCl impurity is suggested as your experiment. Fine. Okay. This is about partially miscible liquids. I know this partially miscible liquids I have brought in between your fully immiscible liquids. We have almost started our discussion on fully immiscible liquids, right? Because in our previous class, we studied how to immiscible liquids separate out as layers and what about the steam distillations, all those things. So now I will go back to our discussion on immiscible liquids and continue its discussion now. Okay, come back to immiscible liquid mixtures. In fact, I should have given you the information on estimation of NaCl through phenol water system just after the completion of partially immiscible liquids, but somehow it just missed my reference perusal. Therefore, I just, instead of simply missing it, I thought I can bring in here also and then continue with your immiscible liquid mixtures. Now, come back to your immiscible liquid mixtures. What was the point previously we discussed in immiscible liquid mixtures? Or if I can quickly go through the points we discussed. One is the immiscible liquids are all or characterized by mutual immiscibility. Is it not? Two solvents do not mix with each other, and then you take them in a separating funnel, you have two layers. And then we came to the vapor pressure of that. We told that the total vapor pressure of this mixture is always greater than the vapor pressure of pure solvent A and pure solvent B. Therefore, what is the implication of this? If you boil this liquid mixture, it boils at a lower boiling point compared to either A or B. Example, aniline and water. You can boil aniline and water at 98 degrees Celsius. And pure aniline's boiling point is about 180 degrees Celsius. So this observation, we made use of the practice of steam distillation. Is it not? So you take immiscible liquids, you pass steam, or you can take organic solvent, which is impure. And then if you pass steam through it, steam does heat the mixture as well as add water. So you create a in situ or within the flask, you create a fully immiscible liquid systems by passing steam as well as heat it, because steam also transfers heat to the mixture. And you can raise the temperature to a point where both liquids will start coming off in the distillate. Is it not? Okay. Now we will do some quantitative calculations of this experiment. What is that quantitative calculation we are doing? Simple. While steam distilling, you are going to get two liquids, both vapors of both the liquids, A and B, and you condense them, liquids of A and B. Now, is it possible now to calculate the weight of both the fraction in the distillate, or the fraction of your interest in the distillate? Is it possible to calculate the weight of that? Weight means it can be volume, basically the amount of liquids in the distillate. Can you calculate? Yes, in fact, you can calculate. So now, if what is the quantity you must be knowing to calculate this? Simply, you have to know the vapor pressure of pure A and pure B. So if P naught is the vapor pressure of A and P naught A, and P2 naught is the vapor pressure of B, the relationship to calculate the amounts of liquid in the distillate is like this. W1 by W2 is equal to P1 naught M1, P2 naught M2. Okay, so fine. What are these terms in the equation? W1 and W2 are the weights of the liquids in the distillate. Distillate, not in the mixture, not in the flask, crude mixture. After distillation, how much of water has come out? How much of aniline has come out? That is what we are calculating using this. P1 naught M1 divided by P2 naught M2. So now, what is P1? Pure vapor pressure of pure liquids. That's the physical constant at a given temperature. What is M1? Molecular weight of liquid 1. What is M2? Molecular weight of liquid 2. So this is a very handy and useful formula. Why? Just by knowing the molecular weights and the other physical constant vapor pressure at the given temperature, you can calculate the relative proportions of liquid 1 and liquid 2. Is it not? So let us work out an example and see the usefulness of this formula. So what is the question? In fact, in your class, I would have solved this on board, but now, this is an online class. At a pressure of 101.3 kilonewtons meter square per meter square, a mixture of water and nitrobenzene distilled over 372 Kelvin. The vapor pressure of water, it means pure water, at the same temperature 372 Kelvin is 97.70. Estimate the proportion by weight of nitrobenzene in the distillate. What are the known things in our formula? First of all, write down the formula. What are the given data in the question? Molar mass of nitrobenzene, you know the structure of nitrobenzene, you can calculate the molar mass. Actually, if you calculate the molar mass, the way we calculate the molar mass, it comes to 123. And what is the molar mass of water? 18. But now this molar mass has to be expressed in SI units. What is the SI unit of molar mass? Kg per mole. So 123 grams convert to kg per mole, 0.123 kg per mole. 18 grams convert to moles per SI unit, 0.018 kg per mole. And what is the pressure? 101.3 kilopascals. Basically, newtons per meter square is pascals. Now, the thing which is unknown here to use this formula, basically, you know the molecular weight of A, good. You know the molecular weight of B, good, because this is very straightforward. Know the structure, you can calculate the molecular weight. What is the pure vapor pressure of water? They have given. What is the pure vapor pressure of aniline B? They have not given it. Is it not? But can we calculate it? Of course you can calculate. How? Because we know this relationship, is it not? The total vapor pressure of the mixture is equal to P naught B plus P naught A. P naught B is equal to, transfer A to the other side, P minus PA, P naught A. What is the pressure at which what is the pressure at which distillation is carried out? 101.3 kilopascals. So 101, that is the total vapor pressure of the mixture. 101.3 kilopascals minus 97.70 kilopascals. Get the answer 3.60 kilopascals. Now you calculate WA by WB. Simply by direct substitutions of these terms, you get it as 0.252 is to 1. So what do you mean by this? 0.252 is to 1. So the nitrobenzene and water are coming out in the distillate in this ratio, 0.252 is to 1. So roughly how much? For one part, for every one part, 0.252 parts will be nitrobenzene. But now the question asks you not to calculate the, the question asks you, of course, you can calculate the relative weights. This is called relative weight. How much is nitrobenzene? How much is water? Relative proportions. So what is the point with relative proportions? It doesn't give you the actual weight. Now convert that relative proportion into an actual weight. So how to calculate that? Weight of nitrobenzene divided by total weight of water and nitrobenzene. So how much of nitrobenzene was taken in this experiment? The answer is 0.252. How much of nitrobenzene comes out in the experiment? Divided by 1.252 into 100. How did you get that 1.252? It is simply by telling, see, estimate the proportion by weight. Fine, good. You can either leave the question here. The proportion by weight is 0.252 is to 1. No problem. It is still correct, proportion by weight. But if you want to convert this into a better term like percentage weight, this is the step to convert into percentage weight. Weight of a compound divided by total weight of the solutions into 100 to make it convertible. Okay. Now my question back. How to calculate actual weight? It is simple. If you know the weight of at least one mixture, one liquid, you can calculate the weight of other liquid because you know the relative proportion 20%. So in the distillate, nitrobenzene is 20.2% by weight. The remaining about 80% by weight is water. So if you know the weight of water, you can convert that into weight of nitrobenzene. But please understand here, it is rather bit unusual, right? Because we are talking about liquids and then we are talking weights. What is the measurement of liquids? Volume, is it not? We talk amounts of liquid in mLs, milliliters, liters. But this is by weight. Of course, you can always take the volume, take density and convert that into weight later. Okay, so these are the type of questions which are generally asked in your exams. So easy, straightforward substitutions. All that you have to remember is the formula and then which data is given. Substitute there, get your answer. Okay, fine. So that completes our discussion on immiscible liquids, pure immiscible liquids. Now, like I told you, to partially miscible liquids, you can add water, you can add impurity in the form of NaCl in our previous example. Same thing can be added to a fully immiscible liquid system also. That means simply we come to a new topic, that is, now in a separating funnel example, I have taken two liquids, example water and chloroform. They are immiscible. They have formed two layers. The bottom layer is CCl4 or tetrachloride or chloroform. The upper layer is water. And there is a distinct boundary separating these two liquids because they are immiscible. Now I will add a solute into this separating funnel. Okay, that solid can be either liquid or a solid. Now you know all solvents and all solutes are not fully miscible with each other. The solubility depends on various factors. So if I add a solute, does it mean that solute distributes or solutes get solubilized in both the layers to an equal extent? No. Why? Because these two layers are what? These two layers are two different distinct solvents. So the solubility of this solute in two different solutes will be different. It may be soluble to a higher amount in one of the solvents. Is it not? Therefore, what is the point I am making? Therefore, if you put a solute in an immiscible liquid system and agitate it, settle it, the solute distributes between both the layers. You find out the concentration of solute in one layer. You also find out the concentration of solute in other layer. Do this for different volumes of liquids and different weights of solute. Every time you do this, find out the concentration of solute in liquid 1, find out the concentration of solute in liquid 2, and then divide them. C1 by C2, example, concentration in liquid 1 divided by concentration of liquid 2. You get a constant value. Okay, so okay, fine. Let me show you a video in which iodine is the solute and the immiscible liquid system we are considering one is water chloroform or CCl4, water CCl4. So let us watch this video 1 second.
Solid iodine is not very soluble in water. If the dense nonpolar solvent carbon tetrachloride is added to the mixture, it forms a layer underneath the water. The nonpolar iodine is extracted from the water and readily dissolves in the carbon tetrachloride. Difference in color between the two solvents indicates that the iodine molecules interact somewhat differently with the solvents.
Okay.
Solid iodine is not very soluble in water. If the dense nonpolar solvent carbon tetrachloride is added to the mixture, it forms a layer underneath the water. The nonpolar iodine is extracted from the water and readily dissolves in the carbon tetrachloride. Difference in color between the two solvents indicates that the iodine molecules interact somewhat differently with the solvents.
Okay, maybe some issue was there. You couldn't see the video, full video. Okay, no problem. You just have to open your YouTube and then simply type solubility of iodine in water and CCl4. You will get a lot of videos. What is that you can see, that is, you know, why this experiment is prescribed? Because iodine is color, right? It has a tinge of brown color. And then in water, iodine gives a pale yellow solution. In CCl4, it gives a dark brown solution. Why? Because water iodine solubility is lesser compared to iodine solubility in CCl4. So, but it doesn't mean that iodine doesn't go to water at all. It definitely goes. Now, what is that you have to do? Find out the concentration of iodine in water, find out the concentration of iodine in CCl4. Divide them, you get a constant, and that constant is called distribution coefficient. Anyways, so, and this observation, of course, was formulated in the form of a law, and that is called Nernst distribution law. So what does Nernst distribution law tell you? It tells that at constant temperature, this is the caveat, this is a very important condition. At constant temperature, a solute distributes itself between two immiscible solvents in a particular ratio. This is important, in a particular ratio, given by Nernst in 1890. So the expression of this law would be C1 by C2 is equal to K. As I told you, C1 and C2 are the concentrations of the solute in liquid 1 and liquid 2 respectively, and K is the constant which you get after dividing these two concentrations, and that K is referred to as distribution coefficient or sometimes the partition coefficient. Okay, but now find out the partition coefficient for the given solute in the given in a particular immiscible liquid system, but you get constant. Of course you should get constant, but this is not a very straightforward experiment, because to get this constant always you have to optimize a lot of conditions. You have to maintain a lot of conditions. So I just have given you the list of conditions which affect this distribution coefficient. That constant distribution coefficient K is dependent on so many factors, a lot of factors basically. This constant is a very fragile, very sensitive constant here. This K is because it has too many functions, too many parameters which control it. First and foremost, no chemical reaction should take place. Of course, this is a universal condition in all the discussion we have been making. What is that? Any two liquids we are considering should not react with each other, be they are fully soluble or partially soluble or fully immiscible. They should not react with each other. So the chemical inertness is the first caveat, first condition in all our discussion throughout our solutions chapter. But now why am I written that no chemical reaction? Because the solute you have added should also not react even with solvent 1 or with solvent 2 or with both. Absolutely no chemical reaction should be there. And second is constant temperature. You know how temperature affects solubility. If you increase or decrease temperature, the solubility of solute solvent gets affected always. In the same thing happens here. If you increase the temperature, the solubility gets altered. Therefore, if you are going to find out K, always you should specify at what temperature you have recorded that K. That K value at 25 degrees Celsius will be different, and the K value at 80 degrees Celsius will be totally different, because the solubility would have got affected, right? So constant temperature should be there always. Dilute solutions, you should be working with dilute solutions. High concentration of the solute leads to a lot of complications. What are the complications? First of all, solubility gets altered. Second, association, dissociations, all those things come. Therefore, the law is valid, Nernst distribution law. Or how do I tell that law is valid? You get distribution constant K constant always. Then the law is valid. The law is valid for dilute solutions only. Solute distributing itself between dilute solutions. And then the mutual solubility of two solvents should not get affected due to the addition of this solute. Okay. Example, if you take water and ether system, this is an example of immiscible liquid system, water plus ether. Now you add a solute like malonic acid. What this malonic acid does, you know, it increases the solubility of water and ether in each other. Okay, why? Why is this happening? Because please remember, always the polarity is the factor which is responsible for solubility. If the polarity changes, the solubility automatically changes. So maybe the addition of malonic acid is changing the polarity of water and ether, so that it is making them to become soluble in each other. If not fully soluble, at least partially soluble in each other. That should not happen. When mutual solubility doesn't happen after the addition of solute, then you can proceed to record K. Otherwise, you cannot record. Even if you record, you get inconsistent values of K. Every time you repeat the experiment, you get different Ks. Should not happen means mutual solubility of solvent should not get affected, should not get altered after the addition of solute. And this last point is very important. No association and dissociation of solute molecules should take place. I mean, this, why am I telling this? Because in our next discussion, maybe next week, we are going to see that a solute molecule, solute molecules tend, at least some solute molecules tend to form dimers, trimers, polymers when you immediately add into a solvent. Or sometimes they form individual ions, components, split up. That is called dissociation. Association means molecules get bonded to each other, forming bigger chains. Therefore, that should not happen. If association and dissociation happens, the K value gets altered. But don't worry about this, because we are going to take up this discussion in detail. When association happens, how to correct the K value. What is the correction factor? When dissociation happens, what is the correction factor? These are the things we are going to discuss in our next class. So if before ending this, what are quickly a quick revision on what are the things we discussed. First, we took up variation of CST of partially miscible liquids in presence of an impurity. Example, sodium chloride in presence in water phenol system. What is the conclusion? That a presence of impurity increases the CST of the system in direct proportion. So this can be used to find out the experimentally used for experimental purpose to find out the percentage NaCl in the unknown sample by making use of miscibility temperature method. And then we found out how to calculate the weight proportions of distillates after steam distillation using the formula W1 by W2 is equal to P1 naught M1 divided by P2 naught M2. And then miscibility and then the immiscible liquid systems in presence of a solute. When solute is added to immiscible liquid system, what happens? This is what we saw. Therefore, I think that I have convinced you of the things we have discussed. Thank you. I'm going to stop now.